If you look at my colleagues in both the Assembly and the Senate, you will see that we have quite a bit of support for our bill. So I'd like to thank all of them for participating today and supporting the CVA bill. This bill has 56 co-sponsors, and that is a very large number, and I think it demands that we address it this year, that we pass it in the Assembly, and I will rely on my colleagues in the Senate to push it forward in the Senate so that the governor can sign it.
I think there's two sides to an abuser, and one side is if he's in denial about the sick crimes he committed, about everything he did, then he's a very, very ill person, and that's tough. However, on the other side of that coin, if he is remorseful and he is aware of what he did, he must be suffering so much. I mean, imagine carrying the burden of knowing you fractured the soul of a young girl, and in the case of Andy Gable, many young girls. So I don't hate him. I could care less about the guy. He takes no emotion in my body. And although I do not hate, I do not dismiss, and I do not let it go. And that is why we are here today. The U.S. Olympic Committee, U.S. Speed Skating, they have told me to go back to my home state where the crimes occurred and to prosecute him. And what can I tell them? I have no recourse. There's nothing that can happen. And so there's a lot of victims that are coming forward, and we have a common thread of being abused. And if in our uniting, it's a strength that we can have, that we can go forward. I mean, we have together through the last 5 to 7 years of this bill being passed, quite the tapestry has been woven of all these horrific, awful stories, but they all have one thing in common, that we believe in a brighter future, and it's only going to happen if the statute of limitations is changed in New York State. I'm not standing up here talking about a red vote or a blue vote. I'm talking about we are mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and friends, and it's just a human vote. And I ask that everyone in New York State allow us to be proud of the Empire State and protect our children going forward.
2 words, it stinks. This is what happened this year. I want you to imagine yourself that this is your son or your nephew or your friend's son or your grandson. Imagine this happened to a little boy. You're 14 years old. You're attending a preeminent Jewish high school in New York City. Your Jewish studies teacher takes you in your dormitory room, forcibly sodomizes you with a toothbrush, and leaves, tells you if you tell anybody, he's going to kill you. You're so traumatized by what happened that you go back to the dormitory room later and you try to kill yourself by taking a bunch of sleeping pills. Weeks later, you tell your father and mother what happened. They pull you out of school, they get you into another school, and you try to move on with your life. A few months later, before the next school year starts, you tell your dad, "Dad, we've got to tell the school so this doesn't happen to anybody else." You go in there, you go meet with the high-ranking administrator of Yeshiva University, the world's foremost university for Jewish studies. You tell the administrator, detail for detail, awful fact for awful fact as to what happened to you by this teacher. The administrator says, "Don't worry, we'll take care of it." You go, you're 14 years old, you move on with your life, you try to forget it. What happens to this teacher? Nothing. He stays there for another 4 years. He abuses more kids. He sodomizes more children. He's awarded, years after he leaves the school, with a scholarship endowed in his name by the same administration who knows that he was a serial sexual predator. Now you would say in these facts, are you going to get justice when you finally present your story to the world? When 30 years after the conspiracy, Yeshiva University admits by a slip of the tongue of the chancellor, former president of the university, "Oh yeah, we covered up sexual abuse. We let these guys who we knew were sexual predators go quietly. We didn't want to cause any problem for them." 30 years after this happens, when there's a conspiracy, you bring suit immediately. You should get justice, right? Wrong. That's not what happened. Supreme Court, the Southern District of New York Court of New York Federal Court and the Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit said, sorry, too late, you've waited, past the statute of limitations, you have no ability to get relief, your school wins. They succeed. That statute is a success statute, a cover-up of sexual abuse success statute. It's a shame. It's disgraceful. Anybody, any legislator with any power to do something about it who doesn't should be ashamed of themselves. They have to look themselves in the mirror. This law must change. It must change now.
It is so widespread across the state of New York. And that's why 3 out of 4 New Yorkers support ending the statute of limitations for child sex abuse suits. So public opinion is on our side, so we should take that comfort.
In the Jewish community, this month of April is a very symbolic month. It's a month of remembrance of the Holocaust, remembrance of the victims of terror. This morning, as we left Brooklyn, our whole delegation is here with us today. We're also a diversified group, and not only a Jewish group. We run the Bridge Coalition, which is a coalition of diverse groups in the city of New York. And Rabbinical Alliance of America and other Jewish groups this morning announced that they are adding child victim to the victims of terror. Today is Yom HaZikaron, the days we remember the victims of terrorists all over the world, of all people, black, Jewish, Catholic, Christian, gays, all those that were slaughtered and murdered. And we have to pay attention to our children in our communities, right here in our backyards. And 2015 is our year, and March, we're going to get it done. Thank you, and God bless you.
So the Child Victims Act is a bill sponsored by Assemblywoman Markey and Senator Brad Hoylman in the Senate. I'm a co-sponsor of the bill. We're hoping that we'll bring it to the floor this year. Justice delayed is justice denied in this particular case. In this particular case, actually, justice denied is justice denied. And we certainly want to make sure that these survivors of these horrible crimes are brought to justice. So we're calling on the leaders of the Senate and the governor to bring this bill to the floor and sign it into law as soon as possible.